So just a quick introduction first. My name is Anna Muley. I'm the Executive Director of Slow Food USA. As I said, I'm coming live from upstate New York today, giving Giselle, our normal host, a little break. So just a quick background about Slow Food USA. Slow Food USA is a grassroots global organization. Our mothership is in Italy, but we have local chapters all over the United States. And these chapters often focus on education and kids and how to get kids to understand about food. So Philip Lee here is the co-founder of Readers to Eaters, and he was actually the chapter lead of Slow Food Seattle for many years, and then he was on the Slow Food USA board when I started, and he and his co-founder, other co-founder of Readers to Eaters, Junjo Lee, is also here. And Philip, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about Readers to Eaters and then introduce Junjo in our session.
Great. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here on Slow Food Live and be part of Slow Food because, like Anna said, I've been involved with Slow Food as a chapter lead in Seattle as well as Slow Food USA. And so we together, my wife Junjo Lee and I, started this company called Readers to Eaters. So we publish children's books about food. And our purpose, our company, is to promote food literacy. And it's really in two ways. It's literacy about food, knowing what and how we eat, but also just building literacy about reading, family reading through stories of food, which is something that we all connect with every day. And so just jump right in and learn more about our company at readerseaters.com. And also one example, and we publish stories about people, less about food. It's really about the people behind the food, how we grow it, cook it, prepare it. The culture of food is what we focus on. And we particularly published this one series called the Food Hero Series about people who not just grow and cook it, but use food as a way to improve their community. And so this one particular story here is called Chef Choi and the Street Food Remix. That really exemplifies what we try to do and how we talk about food. And that author is my co-founder, the co-author of the book, as well as my wife, Junjo Lee. So I'll turn it over to her.
Hi guys, I'm here in San Francisco with Philip and two of our grown children who are here from college. So we're all home. And I'm guessing you are home as well, which is a good place to be, especially if you have good food. I would love to read Chef Choi and the Street Food Remix for you, published by Readers to Eaters and co-written with my friends, Jacqueline Briggs Martin. Did you know that authors can write together and we can write with our friends and publish together? Well, that's what Jacqueline Briggs Martin and I did. And the book is illustrated by another friend, Man One, who's a graffiti artist in LA, which means the artwork here is mostly done by spray paint. Isn't that kind of cool? So I want you to watch out for graffiti elements in the story as I share it with you. Now, this is a biography. As Philip mentioned, it's part of our Food Hero series, and it's a biography, which means it's about a real person. And this book is about this dude, Choi, who, like me, is Korean American, and unlike me, he's a chef. I'm a food ethnographer, and I have lots of fun studying food culture, but Choi is a chef in LA. So I'm in San Francisco, Choi is south of me in Los Angeles, and he did something super awesome. I'm wondering, how many of you have eaten from a food truck? Well, in large part, it's because of Chef Choi. So back in 2008, 2009, he put Korean barbecue in a taco and sold it from a truck. He was the first business on Twitter, if you can believe that. And that's what made a food truck, a chef cooking and putting it out there on Twitter where he was gonna be. And wherever he showed up, what was really amazing was there wasn't just great food, there was pops or mushrooms of culture that popped up in the streets where there wasn't that before. And so we thought we really wanted to tell this story of Chef Choi. And in some ways, because I'm also Korean American and I also grew up in California. I experienced a lot of the same cultural experiences of growing up Korean American as Roy did. So in some ways, this biography was writing about my story as well. And I hope you know that authors, when they're writing about biographies or they're writing novels, they're actually sharing a bit of themselves, probably a lot of themselves. Well, first of all, I wanted to show you the end papers. This is called the end papers of a book. And do you notice what it is? It's ramen noodles. So why in the world would Slow Food Live host a story about instant processed ramen noodles? Well, I think ramen noodles belongs right here with Slow Foods in a way, because if we think about food, it's not a binary way of good food, bad food, or cheap food, processed food, and then really expensive, fresh fruits and vegetables. Food is about relationships, and ramen has a very special relationship to the Korean people. In fact, ramen fueled the Korean Industrial Revolution because we ate ramen all the time. This is Korea's very first ramen company, and that opened in 1963. And in 1963, we had just gotten over a civil war. What would the Civil War be called? That's right, the Korean War. And we were poor, we were hungry. Korea was rebuilding from a devastating civil war, and so we were receiving American food aid like wheat, Spam, American cheese, things like that, and we didn't know what to do with it. And so when Koreans don't know what to do with ingredients, they turn it into a soup, and ramen noodles was one example of that. And it is beloved in Korea. And in fact, this is the kind of pot that traditionally ramen in Korea is cooked in. And in Korea, actually, often ramen is eaten together. We rarely eat it. We rarely used to eat it alone. We would always cook it with other people. And we would always customize it and make it special, make it our own by adding an egg or maybe some green onions, something to make it our own, maybe even Spam. But that is why this book about Chef Roy Choi starts with a recipe poem. And I just wanted to point out here graffiti elements like this splash and splatter, and then these are called slaps. And throughout the book, you'll see these slaps with recipe poems. So I'm going to read the very first recipe poem about ramen, a ramen remix. Make ramen with Chef Roy Choi. Slide an egg into the broth. Put on cheese, sesame seeds, and colorful greens. Serve it up, see a smile. Roy says, good food makes smiles. How many of you would agree with that? Does good food make smiles? I think so. Well, here's where the story begins. Chef Roy Choi can chop an onion in an instant, carve a mouse out of a mushroom. He's cooked in fancy restaurants for rock stars and royalty, but he'd rather cook on a truck. Roy calls himself a street cook. He wants outsiders, lowriders, kids, teens, shufflers, and skateboarders to have food cooked with care, with love, with sonmash. I'm gonna move this out of the way. So hopefully you can see the artwork. Now, Roy Choi cooks with sonmash, and he says it with an LA hip hop twang. In Korean, it's son mat, and son means hands, right? Hands, and mat means flavor. So son mat is Korean culinary wisdom, and it really means food made by hand, made with love, made with care. It's food flavored by relationships. And that's why we think this story belongs in Slow Food Live. 손맛. Roy Choi was born in Seoul, Korea. His family moved to Los Angeles when Roy was 2. Growing up, Roy loved his mom's food made the Korean way, by hand, briny and tangy kimchi. This is kimchi from my favorite restaurant. Some of the benefits of quarantine has been the takeout programs. And I encourage you to try takeout from your Korean restaurant. It's super. There's a great one in Portland, by the way. Tangy kimchi, spicy bibimbap, scallion pancakes studded with oysters. Her kimchi was so special, friends bought it from the trunk of her car. So popular, his parents opened a restaurant, Silver Garden. While Roy's parents were busy earning a living, he explored Los Angeles. Streets were his living room and his kitchen. He tried tamales, tacos, hot dogs, but nothing was tastier than his mom's cooking. Can you see the little Roy here? So, do you notice something about Roy? What is he wearing? That's right, he's wearing a hat. So in every picture, because Roy grows up through this book, you'll see Roy wearing a hat. See his hat right there? Do you know what kind of hat it is? It's an LA Dodger hat. Because Roy's from LA, he's a big fan. To Roy, the family restaurant was the best good place. All day, Roy's mom and her crew chopped, mixed, and seasoned by hand. Roy loved the bustling kitchen, crowded with panchan. And at 3 p.m., everyone gathered at booth number 1 for dumpling time. Family together, making food, Roy's best good time. Can you see Roy? Also, Man 1, our illustrator, put a hidden art element in the picture. Do you see it? If you look carefully on the table, do you see the shape that the panchan is laid out in? It's LA. Well, here's where Roy grows up and he goes through his middle years. Neighborhood changed, restaurant closed, parents' new jewelry business, big house in the burbs. But to Roy, life was not better. He didn't look like other kids, sing the same songs, or eat the same snacks. Where did Roy fit? Roy was all mixed up. When Roy finished school, he didn't know what to do. He walked the streets, found rough places. Worn out, he always came back home where his mom helped him get strong with kimchi, rice, tofu, stew. I wonder, what is your favorite food? What is the food that you, adults and kids, go back to that your mom used to cook you to make you strong? Curious. I wonder if you can write it in the chat. One day, as Roy watched a cooking show, he realized where he could fit. I saw myself in the kitchen. I saw myself at home. He went to cooking school and learned teamwork, knife work, sauce work. When he graduated, Roy took jobs in fancy restaurants. He felt just right in his white chef's coat, running the kitchen crew, cooking for movie stars, cooking for 1,000 eaters a night. Roy was a success until he wasn't. Too tired, he couldn't cook fast enough for all those diners. He forgot recipes, lost his job. Where did Roy fit now? He didn't know. A street food remix. Then a friend said, let's open a taco truck, put Korean barbecue in a taco. What? Chefs cook in kitchens, not on trucks. But Roy said yes. He wanted to remix the tastes he loved on the streets that were his home. He used mad chef skills to build flavor and cooked with care with sonmash to create Los Angeles on a plate. Korean short ribs, crispy slaw on corn tortillas with a squirt of Roy's awesome sauce. And kids, do you know why Roy's awesome sauce was so awesome? It's because he perfectly balanced the 5 tastes. Salty, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami, or savory is another way to describe that. Do you have any favorite awesome sauces? I'm curious. Maybe you can write it in the chat for us. Roy and his friends rolled down the streets of LA in their Kogi barbecue truck, looking for hungry people. Move on, people said. Korean guys can't do tacos? No way. Roy kept cooking inside the truck while his friends hustled outside, finding people to buy their tacos. And when they did, what do you think happened? Can you tell from the expression of the people on this page? Do you think they were happy? Can you see the smiles? Kogi tacos tasted so good, sweet, tangy, so much savory. Eaters ordered more, took pictures to share with friends. Roy saw that Kogi food was like good music, bringing people together and making smiles. Strangers talked and laughed as they waited in line. Koreans with Latinos, kids with elders, taggers with geeks. Roy found his place back on the streets, feeding hungry people, cooking up joy. He was home. He was living his best good time. Kogi tacos made Roy famous. Kogi trucks showed people that fresh food, full of flavor, chopped, mixed, and seasoned by hand, didn't need fancy restaurants. Do you see all the little Kogi trucks? And then do you see a Kogi truck right here? It's a little Kogi truck. I think a 5th grader in Los Angeles made this for us. And you can see this puppet if anyone's in Los Angeles. If you go to the Central Main Library in LA, you can see another Roy puppet in the children's library room in a case. This was actually an award from the Friends of the LA Library. Roy wanted to feed more people in his city. He opened cheerful cafes in worn-out neighborhoods. He taught kids to make and sell their own tasty treats. But that wasn't enough. He called on his chef friends to start cooking for everyone. Let's feed those we aren't reaching. A fast food remix. Chef Daniel Patterson answered Roy's call. The 2 friends decided to open fast food spots in hungry neighborhoods to feed good food, create worthy jobs, and bring smiles. To me, that's the definition of what slow food is about. They tested recipes for foldies, crunchies, birds, and bowls that kids could eat while skateboarding, exploring, or just hanging out. Here's the picture again. They built the first local in Watts, LA, across from Florence Griffith Joyner Elementary School. Roy and DP wondered, would people care about soulful fast food? Food cooked with so much. Would they walk right past? What do you think happened, kids? Well, on Local's first day, The line of people wrapped around the corner, all waiting to try tasty food in a new best good place. Roy said, I feel like crying, laughing, hugging people. We are here. And here's the last page. And this is our page for you. This is our invitation to you kids. A neighborhood remix. Roy Choi wants to build more locals, remix neighborhoods everywhere with hope, mad cooking skills, and fresh ingredients. Feed goodness to the world, but sometimes he worries. Can it work? We can help Roy be part of the crew. Street folk, kids, moms, dads, skateboarders, singers, and sillies. Mix new dishes, share all we can, cook with sonmash, cook with love. And that is the end of our story. Do you see another hidden secret element on the table? That's right, it's a heart. And in Korea, we make hearts like this. And this is a perfect heart that you might give to your friends and family during social isolation. You can always give them a finger heart. You can pull it out of your pocket and give them a finger heart. You can also give them finger hearts in pictures. And you can just tell them in words that I love you. And I believe one of the best ways to receive love and to show love is food. And here, Jackie and I, my co-author, my friend, wrote this final recipe poem that I'd love to share with you. Fill empty bowls the Roy Choi way. First, hot rice. Then, tasty leftovers. Slide a fried egg on top. Squirt your awesome sauce. Bibimbap, made by hand, makes bowls sing. Of flavors, textures, of friends, sharing the joy of a neighborhood remix. And that is the end of my story. Thank you for reading with me. Anna, do we have questions?
Thank you, Junjo. That was so sweet. I have read this book to my son who's 5 and he's a big fan. I'd invite anyone who has questions to put it in the Q&A and I can read it to you. I wanted to read out some of the favorite foods that people put in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen that. So Amanda is saying grilled cheese and tomato soup. Selena is saying pierogies and sardines. We have enchiladas from Leon, laksa, lemak, chicken adobo, soup, rice casserole, and pizza, 2-crust chicken pie. So a lot of favorites from childhood.
Oh, super.
There is one question about the name of the Korean restaurant that you like for kimchi. If you have recommendations, and I'd invite anyone else to put in questions. This is a good opportunity to ask a question to an author. So you can go ahead and put it in the Q&A section.
Well, okay, since this is the slow food crowd, I will just share my favorite restaurant in the world is Benu, which is founded by a Korean-American chef, Corey Lee. And Chef Corey Lee, he used to be the chef at French Laundry, and then he started his own restaurant over 10 years ago. About the same time when I suppose Chef Roy Choi launched his food trucks. It was all after the Great Recession or during the Great Recession. So I have great hope right now that the food industry is actively going to be creative and dynamic and come up with all different kinds of ways for us to share food. But Corey Lee, over the years that I've been eating at Benu, the menu, and maybe just for me because I love it so much, started shifting to Korean. And so I used to tell people, my favorite restaurant in the world is in San Francisco, and it's a Korean restaurant. But literally, he is planning to open a Korean restaurant in the Mission called Sanho-won. And because of COVID-19, plans are delayed, but he's been using Venue as the test kitchen. And so this is kimchi from Chef Corey Lee's new soon-to-launch restaurant, Sanho-won. And it's kimchi, and boy, is it good. It's like kimchi that you can't get anywhere else, because it's like kimchi that a mom who's a chef would make for you. So it's super.
Wonderful, thank you. We don't have any other questions right now, but so I think we could move on to the next, and then I'll keep an eye on questions as they come in.
Yeah, so throughout the book, we have some definitions of Korean food, like banchan or kimchi. And I just wanted to go through some of those definitions for you. So kimchi literally means submerged vegetables. And only in the Korean language and in the German language do I know of as having specific words for vegetable fermentation. So this is kimchi, and it is so good. It is live fermented, so oftentimes when the kimchi is out, it'll start bubbling and it'll spill over. But this is Napa cabbage that is fermented with, and it's fermented in, so it's first wilted, and Philip can smell it. Oh, it's so good. It's first, submerged in salty water and then taken out, and you season it with chili pepper, garlic, onion, ginger, sometimes oysters, whatever you think is delicious, and left to ferment. So this is kimchi.
And we can offer a link from the Sophie line.
And then there was another word, banchan, in the book. And here, let's see. Where did it show up? So banchan. Banchan are all the shared dishes of a Korean meal. And so unlike some cultures where the food comes out in courses, in Korea, we put it all on a table together. And I wanted to show you a little bit of a Korean table setting. So this is a single setting. So this is actually a Korean table, and it has short legs, and we can sit it on the floor. So in Korea, we typically eat on the floor on low tables. And this is a typical setting for a Korean meal. And I see my daughter has taken the most important bowl out, which is the rice bowl. So we would have a rice bowl. We would have our own individual soup. So we always eat soup. And then we would have a spoon and chopsticks. And you can always recognize Korean spoon and chopsticks because the chopsticks are metal. I think most other cultures that use chopsticks use wooden lacquered chopsticks. But Koreans like their metal chopsticks. And then these dishes are banchan. So they're set out like this, and everyone around the table can share. And part of Korean culinary wisdom is sonmat. So son, remember, means hands. Mat means flavor. So sonmat, it's food made by hand with care and love. It's also sort of that secret sauce that only your mom or grandmother, she like puts into her food. That's sonmat. And then another culinary wisdom is the principle of 5 colors. So we always make sure our food is colorful. And I don't know if you guys do this, but in Korea, we just always, this is what guided, I think, the healthfulness of the Korean meal, is we always have different colors of our food. And the 5 colors that we like to include are, this is just for demonstration purposes, but we would mix the colors together. So every dish inherently, we would look to have 5 colors. And then the final color would be white, of course, for the rice or noodles or bone soup. So we would always have 5 colors mixed together, and the colors would be white. We would make sure to have yellows, so eggs are often our yellows. Reds, so reds or orange. We love our chili peppers. Carrots we love, and then lots of greens. Koreans love greens. And then we would have dark colors represented by brown food, mushrooms, or black sesame seeds, or zucchini, or seaweed would represent the black color. So we would always make sure to have 5 colors represented in our food, which is why, going back to the beginning of the book, and I shared that recipe poem about ramen. So we just need to incorporate different colors into our foods every time. And I think that guides our diversity, so nutritional diversity through colors. And so in a lot of ways, it's the same idea as Eat the Rainbow, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Anna, I'll turn it back over to you.
I love that. I love the concepts of the 5 colors, and maybe giving it more specifics than just eat the rainbow. Like every meal needs to have those 5 colors. So thank you for sharing that. Evelyn is asking about what Chef Roy Choi is doing now. Do you know what he's up to?
Well, the last we heard, so one really awesome thing. Thanks, Evelyn. That's a great question. One awesome thing about Roy Choi is that he is an entrepreneur. He tries things and he fails, and then he tries again in new ways. And Local, the restaurant that we talked about, that we were so excited about when Jackie and I were writing the story and after the story launched. And this is a shirt from Watts. And you can see I'm wearing this shirt in the book. If you look at the book really carefully in the back, there's a picture of Jackie and I doing the research for the book. And we pretty much, well, Jackie's wearing the Local shirt. We pretty much ate our way through Local in Watts, which was the first location. And then he opened it in Oakland and San Jose, and unfortunately, he had to close Local. And so what he did was he went dark for a little bit, but we've seen him resurface as a dark kitchen. And so it seems like he's cooking bento boxes for delivery. And the group that he's beta testing it with are the teachers. So they're the elementary, middle, high school teachers in LA. So if you're a teacher, you can, on an app, order his meals, and then he'll deliver it to schools. So I think that's super awesome. It's a continuation of his idea that everybody should have good food, especially our teachers, because they're teaching you. The most important people in the world, right? Our kids and our teachers.
I love that. One thing I'm wondering about is you started off talking about ramen, and I wonder how you prepare ramen in your home, or like a very simple way that people might be able to take the basic ramen packet and make it more interesting in this style.
Yeah, there's so many ways, and I love that slow food. We're talking about instant food right now. There's so many ways to eat ramen, and I'll tell you actually the story that I tell kids when I do school visit, and I bring them this. And in Korea in the 60s and 70s, 80s, up to the Olympics, Korea was really poor. We were struggling. We were industrializing. And some people didn't have enough food. Classroom size in Korea at the time, and still is about 70 students a classroom. First, can you imagine that? 70 students in a classroom. And they were numbered from 1 to 70 according to how well they performed on tests. So number 1 was the class president and was the smartest kid in the class. and all the way to 70. And during lunch hour, guess what? The teacher left the room and let the kids eat lunch on their own. And so everybody would bring their bento boxes. I'm sure you guys have seen bento boxes. These are, because I'm in my kitchen, I can do this. I love bento boxes, but I'm sure you have seen these bento boxes or these bento boxes. The kids would bring bento boxes. But there was one kid who always, took out the pot. Maybe there was a pot in the classroom. And then another kid who would bring out ramen. And so they would start cooking it on top of the heater that was meant to heat the classroom. And so they would cook it together. And then the other kids would start contributing. They would add their panchan, their side dishes that they brought. Maybe if you were lucky, you would even put an egg in it. And then so they would combine it all together like that. And then the kids would share it. Everybody ate it all together. The lid was a perfect sharing element because you could use it as a small bowl or you would use your own small bowls. And so my favorite way of preparing ramen is to eat it together. Actually, now my most favorite way is to steal a bite of ramen from one of my family members who are eating it. That way I don't eat too much because it's so delicious I can eat the whole thing. But really, so that's the long story about ramen in Korea. And some ways that Koreans love to eat ramen. This is very popular. I don't know if you guys might know this already. But when you don't have a pot, water, and a heating element, one favorite way Koreans would eat ramen is they would, and I don't advise kids to do this because it's like, but they would add the spice packet directly into the ramen, shake it up, and then eat it like a snack. So this is one way you can eat ramen. It's quite good. When I make ramen, I tend to always add an egg and green onions. That's just standard way to make ramen. So yeah, that's how I like to eat ramen. Another way is if you don't want the instant soup, you can use your own chicken broth. Like here, I have leftover bones. So I always use all my leftover bones. Philip cooked a chicken last night, so we have this leftover soup. And so I actually use my own soup broth and boil the noodles separately and then add it to the ramen. You can also in the bowl when you're serving it, put like whatever greens you might have, like arugula or spinach or lettuce. Put a big pile of greens in the bowl and then add the ramen to it, and it cooks down really nicely. Yeah.
I love that. Simple innovations on that ramen. And Megan Davenport is saying she also did the dry snack in boarding school. Yeah, our son,
yes.
Jack Liz says our son loved the dry snack as a kid.
Well, a few years ago, I visited a boarding school. So I am a food ethnographer. It means I study food culture, and I study food culture for the food industry. So for many, many years, I did research. I studied how people ate all around America and the world for food companies. I probably, most all the major brands out there, I've probably done work with. Currently, I am the resident food ethnographer for Google. So that's why we're here in San Francisco. And so I talk to Googlers about how they're eating their food lives. But I've been studying Generation Z, which is kids born after 1998 and younger. So you guys are all Gen Z, and companies are very interested in learning about you. So I've been studying that, and I went to a boarding school. It was an awesome boarding school in New Mexico. And I stayed there a week with the kids, and I realized actually ramen is currency. It's hot currency in a boarding school. And in fact, the kind of ramen your friend will give you or make you is a show of how much they love you. So there's the really cheap ramen, the 25-cent pack, and that's like, okay, we go to the same school. And then there's like the Indomie, which is the Indonesian ramen, which is their favorite. And that means, wow, I really like it. But when you want to express love, and Philip, we have one of those ramens left, don't we? It's Shin ramen.
We're out of Shin.
Oh, so my family just ate it all up. Obvious demonstration that the Shin ramen, it's the ramen in the red package that most of you will know. That is like the highest form of I love you in a boarding school.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can tell the relationship by the ramen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And interesting, Megan is also saying in Shreveport, Louisiana, ramen is a coveted Mardi Gras parade throw.
Oh, wow.
Ramen.
Oh, I'll remember that. That's new to remember. Thank you for sharing that.
Megan,
Do they throw it?
Yeah, do you
they break it up and throw it?
Or you throw the whole block? That's interesting.
Oh,
we throw intact packages.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense. I had no idea. Well, I'll share another story about ramen in Korea. So when ramen first started, the first factory, this one, actually they had a collaboration with a chicken house. So a chicken factory, I don't know if you are familiar with Korean fried chicken, but the original Korean fried chicken is more like Peking duck, where the crispiness, the friedness comes from the skin of the chicken. And so we would hang it and electrically cook it, and all the fat would drop down below. And so the original ramen company found a hack by using that chicken fat schmaltz to fry up the noodles, and that's how they got started. But Koreans didn't know what ramen was at the time. They were highly suspicious of this, and so in order to create market share, this company and another company that also made ramen had to bundle it up with something that Koreans coveted. So they used to sell this, and they would add as their, like in cereal, they would add a special little prize packet. They used to include a cigarette. So that's how they got people to eat ramen. And the other competing company was Lotte, and Lotte made chewing gum. So they would include a stick of gum with the other one. But I think, yeah, lots of ramen stories.
Yeah, with a cigarette. That's amazing. Would you like to introduce the book giveaway idea, and then we can wrap up? Or should I introduce that?
Oh, sure. Well, so we have 2 books, Anna. Is that right?
No,
Yeah. It doesn't. We can send out. Yeah. We can send out more. So I have 2 questions from the book, and whoever submits their question in first, or how should we do it? And correctly?
We can take we can pull a sample.
Okay, we can pull a sample.
Pull a name. Yeah.
But how does Chef Roy Choi describe the Korean culinary wisdom of food flavored by relationships, food made by hand with loving care? What is his word for that? What is the Korean word for that?
So put your answer in the box, in the chat box, and we will draw a name and send you this book if you remember the word. Maybe you can ask the question again.
Okay, so there's a word in the story that I introduced, and it symbolizes Korean culinary wisdom. And it is food made by hand, with care, with love. It's the flavor in our fingertips. It's food flavored by relationships. How does Chef Roy Choi say it? What is the word?
Good quiz.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Mhm.
It's a tough one. Do we?
We have 2 people who got it right.
Awesome. Oh, good
Congrats.
job, guys.
Yeah.
Do you happen to be Korean American? So that was the first quiz. And then the second question is, so there's 5 tastes. What are the 5 tastes? What are all 5 tastes?
Okay, yes, if you can say the question one more time. I have 2 people who've gotten it correct.
Okay. So what are the 5 tastes? There are 5 of them, and I showed you what they were. And they're in the book. And it's what made the awesome sauce so awesome, is Roy perfectly balanced the 5 tastes.
Great. Okay, so I will draw a name from people who put in and who put in the correct answer, and we'll send you a book afterwards. And you guys will really enjoy this book. It's a real pleasure to read, and I plan to gift it to other kids. You know, it's a great way to talk about food and the importance of slow food, and how, like you said, food is relationship and how important it is to share it with others.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, so really back to the ramen, even sometimes instant food can be made with care and with love, right? If you just, and it's my really my story to you is don't judge food. Like, ask questions, be curious about where it comes from, and be open to try. So, and use your senses, and ask your parents and your grandparents the story of their food traditions and where their food comes from, because it's such an inviting way to make to learn more and to make friends. And so when I was starting school, I started kindergarten in Palo Alto, which is just south of San Francisco. And I remember kids telling me, you know, when they came over and I had kimchi or seaweed, they said, gross, yuck, you know, ew. And that made me feel gross, yuck, and it made me feel ashamed of my food culture. And so and Roy also experienced that. He's written an autobiography cookbook, and he talked about that as well. I think it's a very common experience of a lot of people who are immigrants to this, when friends around them, school friends, will tease them about their food and say disgusting. And so when your food is so much tied to our identity, when you say something is disgusting to someone else's food, that feels like you're saying they're disgusting. And so one of the big takeaways from this book is be curious, ask questions about the relationships of the food, and try. Because when you try, you might just expand your world and make new friends.
I love that. Yeah, I think actually you've gotten some people curious about Korean cooking specifically. And one last question, maybe before we let you go, is do you have suggestions on how to learn about Korean cooking? Any favorite cookbooks, or where people could go next to even deepen their culinary skills here?
About Korean cooking, yeah, everywhere. I would say the internet. Just go to the internet and YouTube, talk. I mean, or is it Tik? Sorry, I'm not of that demographic usage group, but it's everywhere. So there's lots of videos, there's lots of cookbooks. I think ask your friends who happen to be Korean American. And yeah, try restaurants that are Korean American. But I think Philip is dying to say something.
Oh, I was just going to get some books.
Oh, Philip was going to bring some books. There's even a Korean comic book, a Korean cookbook comic book, like it's a comic book on how to make kimchi. There's just lots and lots of resources. So for kids, some of my favorite 2 cookbooks are these graphic novels. So there's one on kimchi, and there's one for ramen, which is kind of actually, the ramen cookbook is kind of hard because it's actually teaching you how to make ramen from scratch, but maybe you'll be into that.
A good activity here.
Maybe you'll be into that. But actually, Chef Roy Choi's own autobiography, I think, is an awesome cookbook with recipes. It's not all Korean food, but there's certainly a lot of Korean food in there. And then I have a favorite blogger that I followed. I'm no longer, so into that. So this is Roy Choi, and that's what the dude looks like in real life, LA Sun. But Mungchi is a YouTube blogger. She was first early days ones to do cooking shows on YouTube. So I like Mungchi a lot.
Super. Thank you so much. We can send a follow-up email with some of these names and recommendations. I think folks are always eager to take the next step and to learn more. But I just wanted to thank you again, Joe and Philip, both of you, for spending your time with us and introducing us to this book and to more about Korean cooking. Thank you everyone for joining us on this Slow Food Live session. It's really fun and inspiring to have other kinds of cooking and to learn about, how we can share food and really center food and relationship together. So thank you everyone for joining us, and be well, stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you, and enjoy cooking.
Thank you.